All right, thank you very much. I would like to welcome you all to our discussion right here on Conversations. This week we are joined by writers, actually, Maliya Sililo and Zizi Samson Kantini, as we ask what I have called the tough question. Are we likely to get out of the shell of colonialism? So we are basically looking at culture and change. So this question will be discussed or addressed by our two discussants. We'll start with Maliya Sililo, who will present her, her argument in 7.5 minutes, after which we'll turn to Mzizi, who will also make his presentation in 7.5 minutes. Then we'll invite you, members of the audience, to make contributions. I'll ask questions which our presenters or anyone else who is ready can respond to. So without wasting much time, I would like to introduce Maliya Sililo. I am Gankhanani Moyo myself, the moderator. Maliya Sililo, you may begin your presentation now.
Thank you, Moffat. I find this topic very, what can I say, intriguing. I think is the best way to describe it. Because we are in the habit as Zambians, or maybe as a people, of blaming colonialism for almost everything that happens to us. We tend to think whatever goes wrong is because of our colonial past. Well, that being the case, I feel that we have to accept our colonial past as part of our history, and that change is inevitable. And whatever happened to us in the colonial past shouldn't affect the way we do things now. I think we can't say it won't really totally affect us. It will in a way affect us, but we have to remain Zambians. Somehow we have to blend in what happened to us in the colonial past with what we were before, what we used to be. I would take a good example of the way we raised the children a long time ago. When I was growing up, that's years back, and I found that type of culture, a child was made aware of his or her sexuality at birth. You are born, and from the minute when you are a girl, you are referred to as Mrs. So-and-so. That's your grandfather, okay? And everything you do, it's being instilled in you that you are a girl and you are going to be a wife. Your roles are there, and they are instilled in you from childhood. You can't be born with a dual sexuality, for example. They'll keep on reminding you and putting it in your brain that you are a woman and that you'll be married and you have to cook, you have to do this, you have to do that. At a particular age, they start teaching you how to sit as a woman, how to dress up, and how to address people as a woman. So all that is taught to you from childhood. I just can't remember from what age I was always being reminded that I'm a woman, and as a woman I should do this, I should do that, I should do that. Now, colonialism came. When colonialism came, it taught us different languages, different cultures, but basically we still remained Zambians. Deep inside, we still had that teaching of a long time ago. And I don't feel we should be blaming colonialism for all the ills and the evils that happened to us, because the cultural values were installed in us a long time ago, even from birth. And we as a people, it's up to us to pick the good things and throw away the bad things. I'll give another example of this COVID-19, when it came. And I was listening to all these programs telling us we shouldn't touch, we should keep a distance. I was taught those things a long time ago. I was taught not to greet anybody I meet using my hand unless they are special visitors. Otherwise, I had to stand at a distance if they are strangers and simply say, Ali bwanji wala, moka bwanji. But if they are close relatives, then you would kneel and shake hands. You are never supposed to be close to, especially people of the opposite sex. You kept a social distance, actually, a social distance from strangers and from people of the opposite sex. Hugging was unthought of. Now, all these things are coming and we are being taught as something new. It isn't new. We've always had it, just that, you know, we are now, instead of sieving what was brought in by colonialism and the Western world, some people started forgetting the cultural values they were taught. And now everybody was in for a hug, everybody was in for a handshake, everybody. Now, we got a rude shock, especially some of us who knew these things, when COVID-19 came and we were being told that, you know, go back to the drawing board and do exactly what we were told before. Don't hug, don't shake hands, don't, you know, that is something which was done only to close relatives, not any stranger you meet. So it was always there. I feel we should really learn as Zambians to, if I may use what we were taught as ladies, to sieve what colonialism taught us so that we mix it well with our traditional values, because change is inevitable. There is no way we can remain static in the cultural values of a long time ago. But we should learn to sieve and put the two together. What we learn, to good things from colonialism and the good things from our traditional cultural values, and move forward with a new culture, new Zambian culture, which will be a nice mix, but definitely it will be Zambian. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Key issues, of course, change is inevitable. I won't go far, further than that. I think we'll get back to the discussion after Mzizi's presentation. Mzizi, it's now your turn to make your presentation. You have 7.5 minutes.
I want to start by stating that we need to decolonize colonialism. That is the first statement I want to make, followed by the idea that what we've experienced as African people is not colonialism. It's what I want to refer to as destructionism. Colonialism is a word that is of Latin origin, which means to cultivate, to make something fruitful, productive, and better. And colonialism is actually a kingdom concept, which talks about a queen or king or emperor or empress who has a particular dominion and they decide to expand their territory for sustainability. The main intention of colonialism in its actual meaning and sense is to perfect the imperfection of the colonized, whereby the colony reflects the true picture of what the kingdom or queendom or empire is. So that when you enter the kingdom and you enter the colony, you cannot see any difference. It's like you're seeing the duplicate of one thing to the other. That is the concept, that is the true concept of it. And if we are to agree that certainly that is what it means, where you have a one-to-one correlation between the kingdom and the colony, the queendom and the colony, or the empire and the colony, you agree with me therefore that what we've had is not colonialism. What we've experienced is destructionism. And destructionism certainly has been already discussed and defined that it is a policy or a practice of one civilization destroying another civilization, institution or regime for its own greedy sustenance. And the objective of destructionism is annihilation of the civilization of the conquered territory. That is basically what destructionism does. So it reduces the conquered territory to a mere source of raw materials, a source that provides market for the finished products of the conqueror. And after that is accomplished, that is reducing a particular territory as a source of raw materials, as a market for finished products, as well as a source of cheap labor. There comes a certain process of soothing the colonized by giving them some kind of promises for progress based on issues of, oh, you can be successful through hard work, or you can have a better life in the afterlife by following religious piety, or by doing democracy, such kind of promises. That's what destructionism does. But basically, the highest level or the highest point of destructionism is capitalism. And it does not pioneer a better world for the conquered, but the destruction of what centuries of years of civilization have created. It does not build, it destroys. For the destruction is what its essence is. It produces nothing, it only consumes. And what we've experienced is a scenario where our territory has always been consumed. Nothing has been accumulated. It will be somewhat to play into the narrative of the destructionists, to even imagine that there is something good that destructionism brings about. And we start to think that destructionism brings something that is better when we misunderstand destructionism to be colonialism. Because if colonialism was a word that had such serious connotations, which we know today, the British wouldn't have used colonialism. They used that term because basically they knew what it means. And therefore they were selling an agenda, a propaganda to say, look, you're going to be a colony. This is the reason why immediately you became a colony, you became a citizen of the British Empire. Why? Because that's the essence of colonialism. The colony should reflect the culture of the kingdom. But we know that when we examine 1894 up to present, we realize that we are nothing but basically something that is used for the progress of others, for the sustenance of others in all sectors. So when we are to ask the question which we are looking at today to say culture and change, is it possible to escape the shell of colonialism? I would then have two questions myself. Is it possible to escape the shell of destructionism? The answer is yes. Is it possible to escape the shell of colonialism? Actually, the progress of cultures is founded on colonialism. We are always colonizing each other. That is how it works. We are always learning from others and growing, which is the essence of colonialism. But destructionism, and I'm using the word destructionism based on the framework of a book written by William Chancellor, The Destruction of Black Civilization, Great Issues of a Race from 4500 BC to 2000 AD, the third edition published in 1992. This is how I look at our context. So destructionism is still at play. Colonialism, yes, maybe within ourselves we are still colonizing one another, the Bembas, the Tongas, the Lozis, and all that. But what we experience from Britain, what we're experiencing from the United States of America, what we're experiencing from China is total destructionism. There is no progress to it, and there is nothing that anybody should even try to learn from. It is against our own philosophy of Ubuntu. It does not speak to any of our values whatsoever. I thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Mzizi, for that presentation. Maliya's main argument was change is inevitable, and we should not be using the excuse of colonialism for us to progress. We should be able to choose between what works for Africa and what doesn't, and move on like that, and then be able to pick from other cultures what we think is okay, and pick from our culture as well what we think is going to work. Well, Mzizi's main argument is we haven't really, when we talk about the so-called colonizer, we're not talking about colonialism in this case, we're talking about destructionalism, where this whole culture has been annihilated for the sake of the so-called colonizer. So it's the colonizer who benefits as opposed to the so-called colonized. And then this concept of colonialism has been shared simply because it's a positive concept, and yet what really obtains on the ground is totally different from that. There is no benefit, from the other party. Quite interesting views there. I think at this point we'll allow members of the audience to make their comments, ask their questions. I would have loved people to raise their hands before they ask questions so that we can easily unmute those that want to say something. But if you are not very conversant with the system, I think we can still go ahead and let people make their comments. So comments from everyone present here. So when you want to talk, you can just unmute yourself, then you share your views. Mungu Nwakwalanga seems to be trying to say something.
Mungoni.
Yeah. Yes, Mungoni. Hello? We can barely hear you, Mungoni. I think Mungoni has network challenges. Anyone else who would like to make a comment? Sorry, Mungoni, we can barely hear your comment. We can't get any. Maliya. Maliya, you're saying something.
I'm just having a few challenges. Give me a minute.
Adibwanji.
Then log out. Yeah.
Okay, we can't get Mungoni. Anyone else with a comment? Okay, maybe a question, Mzizi.
Yes, please.
Looking at the concept of destructionalism, when you come to a number of our own groups, of course, you have made reference to our groups, within Africa, within Zambia in particular. When you go to Eastern Province, for instance, we have a lot of Tumbuka groups actually being headed by non-Tumbuka chiefs. For instance, we have Ngoni chiefs and Chewa chiefs being in charge of Tumbuka land. How would you view that? What would be your view of that?
Exactly, and this is what I meant by saying that colonialism, we have experienced it amongst ourselves, within ourselves as Africans and African ethnic groupings in this country. By virtue that you have Mugodi, Chief Mugodi and the rest, who are Ngoni, but they're in the territory of the Tumbukas. And the Tumbukas have no problems with that. Why don't they have problems with that? Why isn't there a freedom struggle by the Tumbukas? It is because there is an extension of a culture that reflects the Ngoni culture and the Tumbuka culture. They have come together, amalgamated in such a manner that there is that symbiosis there is that agreement, there is that progress within the, between and now within the two territories. And speaking further to the colonialism that happened in the eastern part of the country, this is how we even have now a language we call Nyanja. We do not have a people called Nyanja, but because there is this colonization that is taking place amongst the different ethnic groupings, there is something beautiful that is coming, that is defining these people to have a shared identity, a shared worldview, a shared way of doing things. That's not what we've experienced with Britain and any other European, Asian, or American country.
Okay, okay. And then Maliya, yes, you have your hand up.
Yes. Again, I just wanted to comment on the fact that colonialism, or is it destructionism, has been with us throughout history. You know, when the Ngonis traveled north from the south, they brought in their own culture. And if you go to Eastern Province, you find a lot of Zulu culture together with the Nsenga culture among the groups of people calling themselves Ngonis. So that type of, you know, when it comes, it's a different color. We tend to say, you know, colonialism, when actually it has been movement of humanity has been around for ages.
Yes.
And I feel you can't fly far and sit back because of this movement. This movement will be with us, and it was there since time immemorial. People have always moved, and the cultures have made and come up with different cultures.
Okay, so in short, we have
to learn. What we should do as Zambians is learn how to manage these changes that are happening.
Okay. Yeah, so essentially we are always in movement. We are always migrating in a way. We are always going to be in different spaces.
Yes.
Okay, Valashi Chifukusa.
I comment something?
Okay.
It was there before. In prehistory, it was there. Human beings have always been moving. It's not something new. And they've always been dominating each other. So the best way of survival is the group itself. That's you have to learn how to manage that.
Okay, let me ask Valashi Chifukusa to make a comment. He's raised his hand for quite some time now. Valashi Chifukusa, please, you may make a comment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moyo. I've particularly enjoyed this discussion, and I particularly was interested in what in Maliya's presentation, and what got my attention is I was curious. I like to be practical myself, and seeing that culture itself, by nature, it's dynamic. It keeps changing. It changes over time. Now, my question, maybe, I don't know if this is a question or a contribution, but whichever way, it goes to Maliya. So change is inevitable. It is bound to, I know certain things of society are bound to change. Now, my concern is, how do we ensure that we save what is useful to our culture, and to ensure that the pertinent issues, our core values are sort of not washed away. We pass them on to the next generation, because I've seen and observed that with passage of time, core values are equally diluted by what Zizi had earlier on alluded to, distraction. So how do we then ensure that the core values are not lost but passed on? So what mechanisms can we put in place to ensure that these values are not eroded or lost? We make sure that the next generation and the generation to come after that will still have those core values as they were in the past.
Okay, thank you very much, Valashi, for that question. which is directed at Maliya. And I know Mzizi wanted to say something just before I asked Valashi to ask the question. So I'll ask Maliya to just answer that question quickly. Then Mzizi will also come in to make his comments. We are actually in our dying minutes. We have 5 minutes.
We have lost Maliya actually. She's not on.
Oh, Maliya is not here. Oh, that's so bad. Mzizi, you may come in and continue with your point.
The point I wanted to make is we have to be clear, very, very clear when we are dealing with concepts. Our philosophical orientation must be very, very clear. If we cannot distinguish between light and darkness, we will accept darkness as light. And when we talk of distractionism and colonialism, these are two different things. And if we cannot distinguish between these two, we are going to have a problem. Because if I come to you in the name of distraction, know that in everything I give you, you are not going to gain anything, even if you think you are gaining. You are undone. The example Maliya gave of the Ngonis are the ethnic grouping today that do not know their language anymore. They lost something to gain something. What did the British lose?
Nothing.
What are they losing today? Totally nothing.
Nothing.
So that is how you are able to see what we mean when we talk about distractionism. Even what our brother Balashi is asking about, how do we ensure that we don't lose the core values? The first thing is to be able to distinguish what is distraction and what is colonialism. Distractionism has not been there among Africans historically, as Maliya wanted to make the audience think and believe here. What we've had is colonialism as Africans. We've been colonizing one another, but we've not been destroying one another because it is against our core values. It is against our philosophical worldview.
Okay, now Mzizi, I'll have to cut you short. Mungo Nokalanga has his hand up, and I think he would like to make his comment. We have about 5 minutes in which we have to close the show. Mungo Nokalanga.
Okay, now.
Yes, yes. So please make a comment in about 2.5 minutes.
Am I clear now?
Not very clear, but let's try again. Let's try to say something. Maybe we'll get you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
The question is better. When you ask, it sounds clearer, but when you make a comment, it disappears.
My question was, what our core values? When we speak of values, what values has brought up.
I'm sorry, Mungoni. I think you have a serious network problem where you are, so we can hardly hear you. So I think at this time I'll ask Muzizi to give his closing remarks in 2.5 minutes.
My closing remarks are simple. Like I said, that it is possible for us to escape distractionism. And there are 3 things we have to do. Number 1, we need to be able to distinguish between short-term encounters and long-term entanglements that this process has created. What we have to do is to pay attention to the process and heterogeneous forms of distractionism and the multifaceted ways that our diverse ethnic groupings experience and are experiencing this phenomenon. We should not think, for example, that the way the Lundas are experiencing the current dispensation is the same way that the Sengas are experiencing it. We need to pay attention to those idiosyncrasies in the experiences we're talking about. Number 2, we have to highlight the severity of interaction and the radically different levels of political power to review how our people have negotiated and are negotiating this complex social terrain, including the African enslavement and diaspora created by distractionism. And lastly, number 3, we need to bring to light both what can be termed indigenous cultural product and processes on one hand, and more importantly, the creative or creolized cultural products and processes, so that we bring to sight ways that social agents lived and are living their daily lives, and how material culture can review as much as hide the subtleties of cultural change and continuity. If we're able to have these 3 things in place, then we can see the means and ways in which we can escape distractionism and bring about a process of being able to claim back our identity. Because what we shouldn't lose sight is the fact that distractionism robbed the Africans of their divine and inventive identity, and it rendered them as wicked mortals. The living dead ancestors were categorized as demons and completely dead without knowledge about anything. Our animals and forests were equally stripped of their divinity and sacred nature. The earth was presented as inanimate land to be conquered and subdued. And this was emphasized with the industrialization of mines and mechanized agriculture that hoard up the earth, polluted our soils and skies with chemicals. That our earth has been hoarded up to unsustainable levels. Our womanhood has been tended to whoredom. Our manhood is now on the line.
Okay,
through the agenda of homosexuality.
Okay, thank you so much.
These are realities.
Yes, I'll have to cut you short there. Thank you so much for that contribution. And a quick one, Precious Kantini says, this has been enlightening. I now understand what colonialism and distractionism are. I like the comment by Mzizi saying that as African cultures, our aim was not distraction, but oneness. So I'd like to thank everyone for being part of this discussion. Please, we thank most sincerely our presenters, Maliya and Mzizi. Thank you so much. And let's meet again next week at the same time right here, and enjoy the rest of your time. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you.